You would think that eventually there wouldn't be any more horror movies getting less love than they should, but the thing is, there are always going to be movies that don't get the praise they deserve, and there's always going to be more of them than we can count. That is, until all of our media gets relegated to content and siphoned into our Neuralink devices so we never have to experience reality again. But until that bleak dystopian moment, let's talk about the top 5 scary horror movies nobody talks about, part 7. Forgot how to count for a second. Coming in at number 5, we've got Repo, the genetic opera. Often cited as the grossest musical of all time, Repo holds a special place in the hearts of a whole lot of camp fans. It's been compared to Rocky Horror and really not a whole lot else, but that makes sense considering the subject matter, tone, and execution of this absolutely wild, intestine-filled rock opera. In the not-so-distant future, organ failure has become the predominant epidemic. Folks don't have a cure for this general degradation of the human body, so instead, a mega-corporation has stepped up to solve everyone's problems. When has that ever gone wrong? G&Co has managed to monopolize the organ replacement game, able to provide anyone who needs a new liver or lung with just that. These parts don't come cheap though, and G&Co isn't looking for one-and-done sales. Nah, they're gonna lease your essential pieces, and if you miss a payment, you're getting repoed. Yeah, they've got organ repo men in this world. Pretty bleak. Of course, this means that we're gonna see a whole lot of forced organ removals by dudes in dark suits in the dead of night, and it gets gory. When Repo first imposed itself upon the world, plenty of folks were unprepared for the nastiness of it all. Sure, it's a pretty gross and goofy concept, especially when it's done up in such a campy comic book style, but the gore is body horror on a whole other level. Squishy, sticky, slimy organs ripped from bodies like cherries from an overfilled pie. Yuck indeed. All of these impromptu, non-consensual surgeries are happening thanks to the unchecked greed and overwhelming power of those at the top of the society. Beneath all those rockin' tunes, special effects, and exaggerated characters is a cautionary tale relating to people's darkest fears. What if the folks with all the money just decided to squeeze us for what we're worth? What if they took it further than debt and indentured servitude? What if they came looking for the stuff that quite literally keeps us alive? I know it seems kind of silly to be making this point about a guts-filled body horror rock opera, but I don't think such a goofy movie makes a lasting cult impact without some sort of strong message underneath it all that resonates with people. Food for thought. Coming in at number 4, we've got The Possession of Michael King. I'm gonna kick this entry off by saying something that flies in the face of the point of this list. Plenty of people have requested this flick across multiple other videos. So in saying that not enough people talk about it, lots of people have been talking about it. Let's hear it for the fan favorite, The Possession of Michael King. You know, most possession movies have a certain type of person they like to have possessed, right? Often it starts with the little kid or maybe the woman in white, but in this mockumentary slash found footage gem, we've got the skeptical dude getting taken over by demons. Uh-oh. The titular Michael King is a documentary filmmaker, and he has decided he wants to investigate the paranormal. He's quite the skeptic, loudly professing that he believes in basically nothing. No God, no devil, no other worldly forces whatsoever. Setting himself up for quite the fall now, isn't he? In order to prove his convictions and ensure that everyone knows just how smart and rational he is, Michael decides to make a documentary proving once and for all that there's no such thing as the supernatural. He hops online and posts an ad asking for experiments and rituals he can perform while being recorded to see if anything paranormal happens. After getting lots of responses, he's off to the races. He gets his cameraman to record everything he does in the hopes of capturing nothing. But we do have a movie, so he captured something. His original plan falls apart pretty quickly. After a few half-hearted attempts to summon something, Michael finds himself enacting an LSD-fueled ritual in the basement, which is surprisingly effective. He's now host to a demon, and the people in his life are going to suffer for it. Inexplicable noises fill his head, technology revolts against him, and terrible acts are carried out without his knowledge. The found footage style amplifies a lot of these scares as well. The Possession of Michael King is a pretty effective possession horror movie, but it seems to have fallen by the wayside. Critics didn't love it when it was first released, which might have something to do with its general lack of lasting impact now. But if any of the parts mentioned above sound interesting, then this is the underrated movie for you. Coming in at number 3, we've got Hell Night. Now for a real throwback, let's travel through time to 1981. Oh yeah, the good stuff. Quaaludes and Jack Daniels, baby. This is one radical flick. Everything you would expect from a cheesy slasher called Hell Night is here. We've got wild parties, frats and sororities, a supposedly haunted house, folks not taking any threat seriously, and more. And Linda Blair is in it. Folks just don't know how to have fun like this anymore. After a day of hard partying, a small group of pledges are brought to Garth Manor, the location of a supposed killing spree years before. But there's a caveat. One deformed child supposedly survived this fateful day and lurks in the darkness. And of course, when a bunch of college kids trespass on the property, he decides to deal with them. Overall, this is a wicked fun slasher with plenty of good moments. At the time of release, most folks just considered it another Halloween ripoff, but over time it has risen to the top among a bunch of other cult hit wannabes. It's always fun to find a hidden gem from past eras, and Hell Night is just such a jewel. Coming in at number 2, we've got Animal. On the surface, this is a pretty bog standard teen horror movie. You know the ones. A group of Hollywood attractive friends head out into the woods on a fun trip with plans to get drunk, get high, and get busy. The plot points are all there, and there doesn't seem to be anything to set this flick apart from a bunch of identical ones, but when the monster shows up, that's when it takes on a life of its own. The Animal is a low-budget legend. Giving off some crazy Wendigo vibes, but also making its own mythology, the creature that stalks the woods pulls off some absolutely brutal kills. And really, that's all you can ask for from a monster in a movie like this. No need for a tragic backstory or an allegory nodding in the direction of a bigger message, just a really scary apex predator ripping folks to shreds. And of course, there's the ending that implies there might be more where that came from. So simple, so effective. With some fun performances from Keke Palmer and Jeremy Sumpter too. Animal made its round on Netflix back around the time of its release, leading to a lot of folks seeing it and not necessarily taking it too seriously, but that is the joy of it. You'll get a whole lot more out of the experience if you go in knowing it's going to be a less than perfect flick. Let the animal be what it's going to be. And finally at number 1, we've got Daniel Isn't Real. Fight Club for horror-loving millennials. What a way to describe a movie, right? But if you boil it down to its most basic elements, that's essentially what Daniel Isn't Real turns out to be. And it's every bit as crazy as it sounds. Psychedelic visuals, insane ego trips, and dollhouses containing your evil, confident other self. What more could you ask for in a movie? Seriously, this one is a face melter, literally and metaphorically. Poor Luke. He experienced a whole lot of trauma early on in his life. To help cope with it all, he came up with another boy to play with, one much more confident and braggadocious than himself. This imaginary friend, Daniel, becomes all too real, however, and encourages young Luke to do some really dangerous stuff. To prevent this from causing further harm, his mom makes him stash Daniel away in an old dollhouse. This doesn't hold forever though, and Daniel comes back later in Luke's life with a vengeance. Luke is basically an empty shell of a person, letting whoever he's hanging out with dictate how he's gonna act. This lets him fit in essentially anywhere, but also starts causing him a whole lot of trouble. Daniel doesn't like being pushed away and really wants to take control of Luke's body. He knows best, of course. This sets off a series of events with major repercussions, and Luke's gotta figure out exactly what to do about it. It gets weird. A trip and a half, it's wild that folks don't talk about this one more. If only every movie got exactly the amount of love it deserved. Unfortunately, I don't know if we'll ever reach that kind of singularity. In the meantime, we can keep trying to boost the flicks that should have more influence and have a great time doing so. What'd you think of the list? Have you seen any of these? What's a criminally underrated horror movie you love? What's an overrated horror movie? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more caffeinated ones from the top 5 most disturbing scenes in horror movies. DC Carter says, Keegan, you may need to make a part 2, 3, and 4 to cover all the disturbing scenes in movies. You may be right, DC. Make sure to pop some in the comments and make sure they get covered. Lowlander 2004 says, lol, I seen Cannibal Holocaust at my auntie's when I was about 10. And what on earth were you doing watching that 1 decade into your life? Nordic Beast says, lol, I'm cooking while listening to this. Something vegetarian, I assume. Ella Rose says, Keegan, bleak or wonderful enough that she took her own life? That's actually a pretty valid way to look at it. And Mary Anna Conti says, torture porn is not my thing, and to be frank, I judge harshly those who love them. Just saying. I mean, some people express their worldview in violent and disturbing ways, but yeah, it's definitely not for everyone. And that's all the time we have for today. I'm gonna go take a little swim with the sharks. Hopefully my open wounds don't cause any issues. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Why can't I say this sentence without sounding like a robot? This sets off a series with bleh. Why? Unfortunately, I don't know for In the meantime, we can keep trying to boost the flicks so that DC Carter says, Keegan, you me.